Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, team. This is the third episode of Future of Work Talks. We are a group that is oriented around all the avant-garde concepts of future of work, and so our guests are pioneers in this field, future of work. We ask ourselves difficult questions about the future of work, how it's going to develop for us, for goodness of individuals and for goodness of societies, and of course for the goodness of planet. So today, let me introduce our guest. I'm sure you all recognize, but just to be due diligent, so it is my pleasure to host special guest, Timm Urschinger. Well, welcome to you, Timm.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks for finding time for us. So, giving you a bit of context, I invited Timm to share experiences of his company, Life Sciences, and the context for today is the Life Sciences journey to making a meaningful impact. How I observe it, the Life Sciences, you're trying to prove something, and I'm really curious about jumping into details of what are you trying to prove, and what mission you are on, etc. So this is for me personally also very interesting. So with no further ado, I would like to jump into the interview, and I prepared a couple of warm-up questions, just to create this psychological safety. And so last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I saw you speaking at a quite big stage. It was on site. So my question is, how does it feel face to face after the COVID-19? Is it something that became your norm again, or how often do you speak, and how does it feel after the break?
Actually, good question. How does it feel? So generally nice to see people full physically and in a room together, and it's a different type of energy. But it's not really the norm again, I would say. I don't really count, but probably it's on average a talk a week or something somewhere. So it's 50-ish, 60-ish something talks a year. And I would say probably maybe 10-20% are probably face-to-face, and the rest is in a setup like ours here. So both has its advantages, because you can connect with people who you like, and we've also met in different occasions, and we are not close to each other. So if we would have needed to find a space to physically meet in either your place or my place, it probably would have taken another 2 years. So in that sense, it's good that we have the virtual thing, but I do enjoy it. It's a bit different kind of energy. You obviously see body language a lot more. So in that sense, it's also nice to have people actually on site.
So would you like it to become a norm again? Or?
Yeah, well, partially, yes. Again, because I like the energy, but then again, I got 2 kids, and I don't want to travel every day or every week. So this is also the COVID comfort in a way, I guess, because before obviously there was a lot more travel, and now it's a lot less. And I do enjoy the time at home. I do enjoy that I can do things from basically the office at home. Like now, it's really convenient. And I told you before, my wife is out on Tuesdays, so which means today I take care of the kids, and we have that opportunity to do it. If we wanted to do that face to face, even if it was kind of next door in the town, it wouldn't work. So in that sense, it's really nice, I think. And so, well, partially I do enjoy it, but then again, I don't want to travel 80% of my time, I think. Not now, at least.
Yeah, and probably the second thing is, which is kind of related, is also I saw you publishing recently on the four-day working week. So can you share your perspective? Why is it important? Is it a serious topic? Should we all fight for this, or should it be personal preference? Or?
I don't have an answer for that one. So part of the reason why I asked on LinkedIn and posted about it is because I wanted to get perspectives, actually, just different people's perspectives. My personal observation obviously is, and we'll talk a bit more about Teal companies and the challenges, but I think one thing is, if you have a job that you actually enjoy and there's a purpose behind that you identify with and you're kind of driven to make an impact and all that thing, then you run the risk of you work too much. Pretty simple. So how do you balance that? And I think some of the folks like Tina Bieber as well, she's talking about purpose burnout, so is that a thing or so I would say it's definitely a topic worth thinking about, generally speaking. And then obviously, if you look at the experiments in the UK, in the Netherlands and so on, there's at least a suggestion that the performance is not going down. So you get the same amount done in 4 days of work. So kind of 8 hours less or 10 hours less a week compared to before, while at the same time have a bit more balance, probably a bit more free time. People are happier, more engaged and everything. So, I guess there's a point to it.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, interestingly, I'll share this. My wife said to me recently, "Hey, Piotr, there's too much of you in the house. Why don't you think about your remote strategy?"
Fair enough question as well, I think. Yeah.
Right. So what brought my attention to life sciences initially is also the very interesting ecosystem around life sciences. So what I mean here is that I can see you in this ecosystem, like somewhere in between Teal around the world, Lalo, corporate levels, good organizations of OT, right? So it's a very it feels very good place to be in, and it really resonates with me, and also I'm just curious. Can you tell a bit more on how the ecosystem grew together, or how it all started, the connections?
Yeah. So I guess the starting point to an extent is we all have a similar idea of how work should look like or could look like in the future. So I guess, it's all similar ideas, or we are inspired by similar concepts. And I think the other thing that comes, I guess, with the Teal idea to an extent at least is we don't look at each other like competition. It's more the mindset of abundance that we have. So, it's good what everyone's working on, and Otti and Antoinette with good organizations are obviously slightly different to what we are doing. And Otti's at Teal around the world, he's always talking about why Teal is actually not working or not enough and all these kind of things. And so this is a space where it actually does make sense, and we have a constructive dialogue, and we wouldn't always share the same opinion or perspective, of course, but overall we have a lot of respect for each other, and we go in the same direction. And I think this is really what we tried with Teal around the world as well, is to say, it doesn't matter if you're in Teal, in sociocracy, holacracy, conscious capitalism, agile, call it whatever you want. Because the thing is, it's 70%, 60, 80, whatever. It's anyway the same ideas, it's the same concept, it's the same principles, might be different language, fair enough. But at the end of the day, it's all going into one direction. So why do we spend so much time discussing the 10, 20, 30% differences when we actually should just discuss, how do we make an impact? And you said before, meaningful impact was the big question. How do you create meaningful impact? And I just think, there's so much to do. There's enough traditional workplaces that are frustrating for everyone in there. So let's change these. And then, there's no need for competition. We just go all in the same direction. I think that's how it's built. And then obviously a certain curiosity of everyone, I guess, in this whole network, and kind of certain momentum where it creates itself in a way almost.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm totally in this concept of collaboration versus competition. Competition is very destructive historically, as has been. You need to one company needs to compete other companies, and only one is doing it usually, and also this similar with for instance, countries fighting for the best talent, right? This is really ridiculous. Why don't we put the talent together to collaborate. We don't need to fight for these guys. So I'm fully in. So is there any like cornerstone events that actually, you know, brought you together, like, you know, the guys in this ski resort 20 years ago, Agile Manifesto?
No, actually not. I mean, I guess COVID helped to an extent in that case, because there was a lot more going on online.
Yeah.
And some of the guys have actually never met face to face, right? So that's just location wise. And this is true, for example, for Otti. Antoinette, I just met the first time 2 weeks ago here in Switzerland, and we are whatever, it is 150 kilometers apart. So we actually just met, you know, after 3 years. And it's just two of these examples. There's many more. There's a big team on the Philippines, for example, doing all the tech work and getting the community together around Teal around the world. And, you know, I've not been to the Philippines. The guys from the Philippines have not been over here. So, you know, we've also never met. So it's I guess, COVID that helped for this whole more digital, virtual kind of connection. And so, yeah, that's the starting point. And then before, there was a few people like Doug Kirkpatrick, Mornings or ex Morningstar. And we've met in San Francisco a few years ago when we were still traveling, you know, in the good old days in a way. So there is a few who I've met before. There's a few who have met, obviously, and a few who never met so far other than virtual connections. So there was not a big event. It's not like we're all school friends or we met in this place where everyone was or something. I guess LinkedIn, you could say, is the one place where we all met, if you want.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Right. So, like, I'm trying to steer closer to life sciences. So, you know, and I know you've got some slides prepared. So maybe I'll just share my expectation of what I would like to learn about life sciences today. So of course, I'll be very interested in hearing, like, what mission do you actually pursue as life sciences, and what do you do as a company, like, to pursue this mission, and how you, of course, on more practical grounds, how do you, like, approach client engagements, right? Because I suppose it's a bit different than standard engagements, and clearly, you know, how do you run and grow the company? So that's right. So yeah, so the stage is yours. You can share slides or whatever you like, really.
Yep, thank you. And as always, interrupt me whenever there's questions or, you know, I should go deeper. Let's see, I should be able to share my screen probably. Perfect. So a few slides about life science, and then I hope I have all your questions answered, Piotr. And if not, we'll obviously have a bit of a conversation. So bit of background for everyone who doesn't know us or life sciences. So this is the company, basically, or part of the company, as you can see on the right-hand side. Once a year, we go to the Swiss Alps and visit our cow. So the company cow you see top right here, it's called Olivia. She's our company cow. We just take, well, actually in 2 weeks, we take 3 days off, more or less off, go to the Alps, have a bit of fun, and also talk about some of the bigger themes that usually we don't have enough time for. So this is one part that you have to know. Other than that, I think you mentioned already in the intro questions a bit, we're obviously inspired by Teal and Reinventing Organizations by Frédéric Laloux, which, you know, around 2015, when I quit together with the other guy, or the two guys I founded the company with, we just thought it was an interesting concept. We didn't know nothing about Teal, to be quite honest. So it was a bit of an experiment, but some of the concepts resonated, and at least a bit more than the traditional ones that we were all knowing. So in that sense, good. We still say after 7 years around, we're still pathfinders in that world. You know, we don't have that magic recipe, and, you know, this is how it works. And I guess it would be kind of anti-Teal anyway if you had that formula, if you would pretend to have that formula. So we're just trying to sense and respond as much as we can what works. And luckily, you know, Future of Work Talks is some of the some of these pioneers bringing to light as well. And there's more and more of these examples and experiments and people who are looking into that. So in that sense, we can learn a lot more compared to 7 years ago when we were really a bit the odd ones out in Switzerland, at least. They're going for Teal. There was a few holacracy companies, but Teal was a bit strange at that time. So we're still passionate about that. When we work with clients, obviously it could be Teal, it could be all sorts of other transformation, but it's always around unleashing the potential of people. We are not necessarily missionaries for Teal, right? I do like it. I'm an enthusiast, of course. I do think it's a good way forward. But and this is probably the answering one of the questions here before around meaningful impact. So it's really not that everyone needs to work like this. It's really not everyone needs to adopt it. We think is a good way. And if you look at Gallup studies and whatever, people not being motivated, people rather being frustrated, then I would say it's at least an imperative to rethink how we work. If the world is evolving and the workplaces are not, then at some point in time you have a disconnect. And this is, I think, what we are seeing more and more, and certainly the last decade, clearly more. Is Teal the answer? I don't know. If you ask Otti, he would say purple is the answer, maybe, or something. You know, so different colors, different ideas, different principles. And again, I think the direction is relatively clear. So we, for us, decide we go self-organized, obviously flat structures, no direct reporting lines, role-based working, fully transparent, self-set salaries, and all these crazy things that you can't necessarily always do in bigger organizations, especially not, but in our setup you could do. And there's here this document that's called Lifeline. This is a few pages of our thinking on how we want to work together, what collaboration should look like. Not the truth, but a bit of collection of what we think. It's not comprehensive. It's not aiming to be comprehensive. It's really just a few thoughts on how it could look like, or how, kind of giving us our ambition. Because to be fair, the Lifeline is also pretty ambitious. So it's almost describing the perfect state. And as you can guess, most of the time we are not in that perfect state. So we have a lot of tensions and things that we could improve. So we are probably not there. We're probably never there, to be fair. But the ambition is at least documented in a sense as our basis for conversation, oftentimes at least. And for everyone, because also I think this community partially looks more into agile and these kind of things. So for everyone who doesn't know Teal, this is in a nutshell really like a few bullet points, and you could talk 2 hours about that one alone. Of the principles that Frederick Laloux describes in his book, the picture on the right is probably one of the more famous ones that if you Google or LinkedIn or whatever, you'll see that again, describing the different evolutions of an organization, or different evolutionary stages almost. We focus on the Teal one, that's the outer circle, and the breakthroughs, how Frederick calls it, is self-management. So no formal levels of hierarchy. Of course, you always have fluid hierarchy and fluid leadership based on context, clearly. But the idea is not formalized, not in a top-down structure or pyramid type of structure. And authority is distributed, obviously. So we do live that as well. So there's not one central point. There's not one CEO or whatever. CEO works as a good title for LinkedIn because people can relate, but otherwise, internally, there's really not a CEO. Then wholeness is around looking at human beings as human beings, and not like you have a work life, you have a private life, you should wear a mask or you act differently. It's really about, well, there's one life, there's one person, and we just acknowledge that. And then there's also, the spiritual side, the emotional side, all of the things that we don't necessarily traditionally talk about in organizations or in big companies. But it does set free energy if you talk about these things. We talked about your dog before, who's joining here the call. So if your dog, for whatever reason, was run over by a car, then you would probably have a different energy today. Right? Luckily, it's not. So we are all happy and here. But if it was, then totally different type of energy. So why don't we bring that, basically? And part of this, obviously, is as well that there is tension, there is conflict, there's never no conflict. And this is also not kind of proprietary to Teal. If you look at Lencioni and the high-performing teams or the dysfunctions of teams, is a decades-old book, right? Or theory, kind of, and it says the same thing. So it's also not like Teal is a totally new story. And then the third breakthrough is obviously purpose, or evolutionary purpose. And this is a bit of what you asked in the beginning: what's impact, what's meaningful impact, what's the mission we're having, how do we see purpose evolving for us? And one of the more difficult things to answer, of course, what is the purpose of an organization? Certainly, we can say it's not just economical goals or purpose. There's also triple bottom line, at least, is what you mentioned before as well. But there's obviously also a bit of a mission that we are on. So this is I guess in a nutshell what Teal is. And for us specifically, as I said, we try to use these concepts, these breakthroughs. Our purpose is catalyze success, or the longer version is catalyzing the movements of life, which then is part of that wholeness idea, but is also part of, at least my personal story always, is total waste of time, and lifetime is the only finite thing. So if you work in an organization in a context that you basically don't enjoy and that you probably are frustrated about, even, it's just pretty, well, first of all, sad, but second of all, probably also stupid, because again, you're wasting the one finite thing you have in life, which is lifetime. So, and we try to create an impact around it and say, well, maybe there's a few people who could be a bit happier if they would work a bit differently, if organizations would rethink certain structures that are probably outdated. This is really how you could frame it.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yes.
Thank you. What it means for everyone who's not so familiar, obviously we've done away with all of the left stuff, the top management and pyramid and control type of idea. Although, for the ones who worked with me maybe before the whole life sciences story, or even within life science, to be fair, I do like control. So to an extent, I'm a control freak, which then, trying to find its way, or my way into the right side, which is more role-based type of working, obviously autonomy, distributed, and also by design, the structures evolving, hopefully enabling innovation, collaborations, all of these things, certainly based on trust and autonomy. And Piotr, you asked before as well, what's the way of operating? And this is basically the way of operating, but there's a few things that are still interesting. And I think this is also what we're trying to bring to our clients, to just say, hey, just because you're going Teal is not like magically all of your business challenges will be solved. In fact, it's probably the opposite. Your business challenges are your business challenges. No matter what kind of setup you're having or choosing, it will be your business challenges. We just think that leveraging the potential of people could be a bit better with that kind of structure. But the business challenge is the business challenge.
And just to establish, just to establish like the more context, how big you are at the moment?
Yeah, so at the moment, somewhere 15 to 20 people. It depends a bit how you count, but that's roughly the size. And obviously, clients are usually big multinationals. So we talk 50, 80, 100,000 people. And this is a bit the difference in a way, really, because we try to bring to them what we do for ourselves as well. Obviously, there's a scaling aspect. So 20 is one story, 20,000 or 200,000 is a whole other story. So there's a scaling aspect in between. But really, the challenges are similar. How do you create alignment with a lot of autonomy? How do you create alignment with a huge organization? Is always the same question, actually, no matter which kind of setup. The more self-organized, the more autonomous, the more Teal or agile you go, the more likely it is you'll have that question. And we just share a bit of what we're doing. And in fact, it's not so different to what you do when you have a big organization. It's always about communication. It's always about creating that platform, that container where you have an exchange. Because guess what? People don't necessarily remember 127 slides. So the only way to probably create alignment is conversation, unfortunately. Now, this is the same for us. That's the same for 10,000 people. It doesn't change. It changes maybe how you have a conversation, because obviously we could still fit everyone in a room. 20 people in a room works. 10,000 people in a room, going to be a bit tricky. It's going to be a big room. So this is obviously then a bit of a different cascading idea. But the thing is the same. The challenge is the same. Also, the second one, I'm one of the 3 founders. I'm one of the major owners of the company. At the same time, we say we're self-organized. There's no hierarchical structure. But technically, legally, I could overrule most of the decisions of anyone, just because this is how the Swiss regulation, the Swiss law works. Do I do that? The answer is no. Could I do that? The answer is obviously yes. And you will have the same and we do have the same working with big clients, because Piotr is the boss. He's the head of the pyramid. He's the head of something, business unit, the CEO, whatever. Now, you can take that away to a certain extent and say, operationally, we work a bit like this picture here, role-based and so on. But most likely it is that HR will keep your org chart. Most likely is you have some legal implications, just like we have as well. So it will be that balance, that tension that you always have. Piotr is the boss on the org chart, and at the same time we say he's not the boss, because we work a bit like this circle bubble kind of chart. So how does that work? It's exactly the same challenge that we have. It's actually a similar communication or leadership challenge that I have as well. How do I communicate around that? Making sure people understand, my feedback is also just feedback, doesn't change. My advice is also just advice, and it's still their decision. So, it's the same challenge that you have in big organizations. It's actually all that. Information overflow, we have much too much information. Nobody knows where the things are, neither on Slack, nor on Drive, nor on wherever we have the information. So it's the same story. And at the same time, we say distributed decision-making requires everyone to have access to all of the information. Transparency is really one of the key principles of Agile, of Teal, of many of these frameworks, if you want, or concepts. So how do you balance that? You know, you have access to everything. At the same time, you can't probably never know everything as well. You know, how do you play transparency? Pretty interesting one. And also, we don't always have only super experienced people. We have people straight out of university. We have people who come from big organizations who never worked in a self-organizing setup. We have people who have never done consultancy before. So how do you expect these people who maybe know a bit less about our business than others to take leadership and to step up? And you know, it's the same question in big organizations. Why should I all of a sudden take accountability? You know. So what I'm saying is basically we have all of these challenges that everyone else will have as well. And this is really what we try to tell our clients and say, look, it's not magically going away. No matter who tells you something else, these will be the challenges. It's almost certain you'll have these challenges. And you can work around it with certain ideas. And usually, you know, the simple concept is talk to each other, talk to people, and you'll be surprised how many things you can actually solve.
This is like it's like the same problems, but with like a small incubator. Maybe it's easier to experiment with a small incubator.
Totally.
But the nature of problem, I agree, it's probably very similar.
And I mean, obviously we have a running business as well, but it might be a bit of a different business compared to, you know, you have a product life cycle that is 10 years or maybe 5 years or something. So you might want to think about experimenting in that space, or at least be sure that you don't mess it up completely. You know, so this is certainly something with many organizations we work. They obviously have a share price. They obviously are the stock exchange listed. So certain things you probably don't want to do in that setup as well. And we can do that. You know, so this is certainly some of the advantages we have. But really the dynamics behind is really, really similar. And in that sense, this is also what we try to tell everyone, you know, no matter how enthusiastic you are about Teal or Agile or self-organization, self-management, whatever you have, it will not magically solve your challenges. It's not like you will not have challenges. In fact, what you try, or what we try as well, is cultivate a culture around tensions, and just making sure that conflict and tensions and not feeling good about certain things is actually the normal case. It's not plan B, it's plan A. And you know, as soon as you get to that point, then actually the whole story makes a lot more sense. You're getting to this evolutionary adoption of structures and systems and everything, and you get to that point where you could call it a fluid organization, like Frederick calls it usually as well. So this is really good. And then there's the other animal that you also mentioned. There's Teal around the world. For everyone who doesn't know, you know, we have an annual global conference. Usually it's like 30 hours around the clock, trying to bring people together, Teal pioneers, but also people who are passionate about other things, sociocracy, holacracy, agile, people who don't call it anything and just do something and it works magically and they don't even know why. You know, so this is actually the most interesting cases. People do something and all of a sudden we say, oh, that looks pretty Teal. And I have no idea what Teal is.
Honestly, yeah, this is the most appealing. Like, it's so appealing actually for all of you who are watching this video. I really strongly recommend joining the next one. It's just it will be you know, mind-changing experience for you. That I can tell.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and we obviously try to cultivate that a bit. There's also monthly meetups in the different regions. There's one in Europe certainly, and in the US, and sometimes in Asia. We also have the LinkedIn Teal network thingy. But what's really interesting there as well is, you know, there we're not using necessarily the same ideas that we use in life sciences, because it's a different setup. It's all based on volunteer work. Also for us, it's a not-for-profit organization behind legally. We are all just volunteers, basically. We're using sociocracy for many of the things. We moved from circles to hives because Philip, one of the guys who was there from the beginning, he's a beekeeper, and this whole bee and hive story actually resonated with many of us. So, you know, there's that kind of thing. And sociocracy for all is actually using it as well nowadays. So, you know, this is just a bit of a different structure. But again, the ideas behind are pretty similar. The principles behind are really reasonably similar. And it resonates with all sorts of people. Again, some of which work in traditional organizations. Not all of the volunteers work in a crazy little startup like ours. Some of them work in big corporations, and they've never worked in a Teal setup, nor in a sociocratic setup. Then there's other people who actually never heard about sociocracy. And just last year we had that question, well, actually, does everyone in the team really know what sociocracy is? And the answer was no, not everyone. So we're just operating like that because we thought it makes sense and it was appealing to everyone. But actually just this year or end of last year, we gave it a name and say, hey, by the way, this is pretty much sociocracy. So if you want to look it up, this is how it works. And it's all based on these ideas, trust as a foundation. We're working as a global team. Again, in a more traditional setup, you could say it's probably competition. Many of us work in a similar field and services companies. So you could say, well, it's competition. But actually, we're all driven by a similar purpose, by a similar idea of what impact could look like. And we're all passionate about the topic, future of work, to give it the broad title. And in that sense, we just come together because we think it makes sense. And with the total mindset of abundance, where I say, well, there's so many opportunities, there's so much, we don't really care about that economic business, the services that we offer at that in that moment. We just think that Teal around the world is actually good fun, bring people together, we enjoy it, there's a lot of energy, that's probably good enough. There's always a question, how do you pay the bills? Because it's not for profit, this is always one of the tricky things, of course, always. And certain things we're always discussing, should it be volunteer work or do we want to have a bit more consistency or continuity for some things, a constant tension in a sense, but it is what it is. And this is also, I think, what we've learned the last 3-4 years with Teal around the world is really creating impact with a not-for-profit initiative requires quite something. It's not easy because if it's volunteer work, it always comes second to your job that actually pays the bills, that feeds the kids. There's just no way around it. I can't just work 100% for Teal around the world because simply the kids will be starving. That doesn't work, which also means you make it kind of a hobby in a way, right? Or you would say we switch to a model where we actually pay people, which we didn't do so far. So, it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. At the same time, we don't want to make tickets super expensive. And, if you would make this thing actually paid work, then probably really expensive. So it's really a tricky one, and it's completely different dynamic to the life sciences one that I mentioned before. Again, similar setup, similar governance, but the business challenge doesn't go away. The business challenge stays the business challenge. It's a different one here compared to the life sciences one.
And this is probably relating to my question on the 4-day working week. You probably, with all the volume of things happening, you must be really exposed to the kind of positive burn down, right? Burnout.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things on that one. I think one, with a job that you really hate, that you don't enjoy, that you're frustrated with, and you work 30 hours a week, you can get burned out easily. And you can easily work 50 hours a week if you actually enjoy what you're doing. So there's that part. And yes, still, if you work 50 hours, 60 hours, whatever a week, there's a recharging, there's an energy problem. So I wouldn't say, passion and purpose solves it all. I'm saying even with little working hours or reasonably little working hours, you would be able to burn out, of course, if it's frustrating enough, if the setup doesn't work or whatever. And I think the other thing for me, but that's more personal opinion, is I actually don't know how much I work. Because the one thing that I really hate is tracking working hours. Because I just don't like the concept of distributing, like, this is life and this is work kind of story. And it's pretty simple. If I meet a friend from university for a beer, and of course, to an extent, you talk about your life, and part of your life is what we would consider work. Right? Now, the thing is, if I figure out halfway through, oh, he's actually working for a potential client, oh, they're actually doing agile transformation. So is it now all of a sudden a working beer, or is it still, a friend? Do I now track that as working time, or is it still, private fun time? And actually, I think it's a completely stupid question. I don't want to answer the question, and I don't even want to think about it. It's the same if I have lunch with my wife, because the kids are not here, maybe over lunch. So over lunch, and I get this great, amazing idea to change Teal around the world through a conversation I had with my wife. So was that now working lunch or not? Or was it still lunch with my wife? So I just, this whole concept, I guess, doesn't work for me in a sense. But obviously one thing that is true is you need to work on your energy consumption, and you need to work on how do you recharge and how do you keep a balance. Because again, no matter how much work or how little work you do, burnout is a challenge, and for some people it's more a challenge when you work from home because you can't connect to the people. For some people it's actually the opposite because you have less stress on whatever logistics with kids and whatnot. So it's a pretty personal story. I think what we can say, and this is true for me as well, 4-day work week or 5-day work week or 7-day work week, I don't care what it is, but I will always take the freedom to do certain things that I would just wanted to do. You know, it might be go outside in nature, it might be take time with the kids. And if that's, you know, Wednesday 1 p.m., then it's Wednesday 1 p.m. I don't care. So this is a bit how I look at it, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
For more structured organizations, a 4-day work week might still be worth it because you probably don't have that level of freedom that I have at the moment. Also true.
Awesome.
But yeah, I guess coming back to Teal around the world, you're right. It's a lot of work, and a lot of it, you could say, happens in the free time. Also, just simply because, you know, we're having a part of the team in San Francisco, which is -9 hours to where we are in Switzerland. We have the other part of the team in Shanghai, which is, you know, depends on the time, summer or winter time, but it's +6 hours. You know, so there's simply no way -9 +6 and us in between to make it work for everyone in what you could consider normal working times. And, you know, this is also part of the truth. This whole Teal around the world global thing is a lot of fun, but not for the preparation and finding time to talk to each other, because it's always either evening or early morning for somebody, and there's no way around it.
You have no excuse. You need to use the self-management.
Exactly. And I think this is actually the other thing, you know, is distributed decision making. There's no way to not do it. You can't have central decision making where everyone's together, because it would just be incredibly slow. It doesn't work. So it needs to be distributed. It needs to be to a lot of the decisions need to be asynchronously taken. We'll be using Slack a lot as a communication tool, of course. So, you know, also that makes sense. And the bottom point here, and I think this is true for our clients, this is true for life sciences setup, that's true for Teal around certainly, is governance is much needed. Because if you wouldn't have structures that you can rely on, then it's probably just chaos, or people would, yeah, kind of be petrified and not do anything because they wouldn't have any structure to hold on. So I think this is really key. And then from the structure you have, from the different roles you have, you actually allow for that attention space. You actually allow for people to just take that, you know, that challenge, that task, that action, whatever it is, and use their potential. And I think this is also the beauty of that whole self-managing story.
I actually never thought about it this way. The geographically dispersed companies actually are privileged in terms of, you know, at least experimenting with self-management.
Exactly. And at the same time, with some of the challenges we talked about before as well, you know, how do you make information flow work across different time zones? You know, how do you do that asynchronously? Some people, like, I'm pretty fine with asynchronous way of working. Other people enjoy synchronous way of working much more. So how do you cater for the different preferences as well? It's not necessarily always an easy topic. So, but yeah, with Teal around the world, also fun, and at the same time, similar challenges in a way, if you want. And just to give you a few examples, because you also asked in the beginning, well, what's meaningful impact? And the answer is, I have no idea. It's a conversation I have with Otti for 4 years now. I think, what is actually impact? How do you generate impact or not? He might have an answer. I don't have an answer. And so I much rather look at, you know, the little things and practices that have evolved over time. And I mentioned the cow days before. So it's part of our purpose in a way that we say, you know, there's a community, there's in Switzerland, we give back. And actually, you know, farming in the Swiss Alps is incredibly tough business. It's not an easy one. So we're actually happy to do that. And at the same time, every cow day, we spend at least an evening on, well, what's my personal purpose? And we talk about it as a team, and we share with each other, you know. So this purpose evening, if you want, is one of the key things we have. And also is not necessarily something that generates impact or purpose per se, but talking about it and giving it room for conversation does create a lot of energy, and it probably does create something downstream that you could probably say that's impact. So this is just one example where, you know, conversation and talking to each other actually is really helpful.
I'm really curious how many people and how many companies will try to, like, follow up on this idea, right?
Well, I can recommend, I mean, you don't necessarily need a cow, obviously, but the purpose evenings are really good fun. And, you know, again, if you want to have a cow, fine, but you could always do purpose evenings or purpose days without a cow, obviously. That does work.
Yeah.
We also have a concept that we call purpose pot, and I think many of the companies in the Teal space have a similar idea. We just say 25% of our profits we set aside to fund, good cause projects in a way, simply because we recognize that we are pretty privileged in our part of the world. We're pretty privileged with the business that we're doing, and all of the opportunities we have. So we also think we should give back to people who are probably not as privileged. And also for these projects, which are just difficult to fund, we've supported because one of our catalysts has a big connection to India. So we supported an Indian rural hospital project, just because we had a connection there. But it's really these ideas to just say, there's things that we have access to that other people don't have access to for no good reason, just for privilege, basically. And this is obviously part of our purpose idea as well. How do we give back? And then Teal around the world, from a life science perspective, we actually consider a purpose project as well. And how it started was a stupid idea over, I think, a beer, or maybe also 2 or 3 beers, too much, where we said, well, why not do that? And then we sent an email to a few people. Actually had a conversation with Philip Atkinson over LinkedIn comments. So I was really just in the comment section in the beginning, and we took it to the next level, and there was a few people interested, and then here you go. Now it's a pretty fulfilling and time-consuming exercise every year again, and it's good fun. So it's also that purpose is part of following the autonomy that you have for this whole, or from this whole Teal idea as well. So this is how I look at it as well. Now you could say there's obviously purpose and impact through client work. I would say yes, that's true probably. You can always argue, when you work with big organizations, how much impact do you really have? How little impact is it? Again, conversation I have with all sorts of people is it more impact to change little things for 10,000 people, or is it more impact to turn a 100 people company upside down? I don't have the answer. I can say we have preferences for our business at the moment, at least, but I don't have the answer. So for us, it's also little things that might change the corporate world is interesting. And just last month, actually had a coffee. I met somebody over coffee here in Basel that I've not met for 3-4 years. So I've not seen that guy for a really long time, actually before COVID, some point in time. And he said, Tim, do you remember that meeting that we had 4 years ago? And I said, no, I have no clue. And he said, well, that meeting changed my life, actually. I've done this and this and that afterwards. And this is also impact, of course. I didn't even remember the meeting. Obviously, when we talked about it, I was like, okay, I do remember now, but it was just not meaningful for me. So you never know what's meaningful for other people, actually. And for him, obviously, it was a life-changing meeting, and he changed everything after it. So this is also impact, and you never know what kind of impact you have, really, I think, or oftentimes you don't know, at least. So I guess meaningful impact is a tricky concept. Probably a wicked question to answer, but at the same time, I'm pretty convinced we do have some positive impact. And luckily, there's many more people on a similar journey as well. So this is really good. And I think that's the last slide as well. This is a bit the question, where do you start if you want to create that impact, if you want to explore these kind of spaces? And there's all sorts of things that you could do. But I think for me, always is the top left one is kind of the key one, this why not story. So if we would have asked ourselves, why should we do Teal around the world? I'm pretty sure we would have found a million reasons why, there's all sorts of good whys behind why we shouldn't do that stuff. But if you ask yourself, okay, but really seriously, why not? What could go wrong? What's really the big risk? Right? And you're like, well, the big risk is nobody comes. Okay, fine. If nobody comes to the conference, then, we had a bit of fun preparing it. Nobody comes. Fine. What if we don't get the tech right? Okay, fine. Let's try the tech. But otherwise, what could go wrong? Why not? And it's not like you jump out of a 5th floor window, because this is really painful. You shouldn't do that. There's good reasons why not. But actually, for things like Teal around the world, for all sorts of crazy ideas, there's not a good reason why not. And I'm not saying that all of the experiments were as successful as Teal around the world, by the way. We had so many ideas that we thought was the greatest idea ever, and actually nobody cared. So it's also true. But why not, basically? And just challenge yourself. Is there a really good reason why not? Because otherwise, at least you learn something. And this is also why I like this Einstein quote always quite a lot, because it says the world as we have created is a process of our thinking. And you cannot change it without changing your thinking, which means, if you change your thinking, you can actually change the world, in a nutshell. So really like the Einstein quote, and this is probably also to everyone who's tuning into the video. If you start to maybe challenge yourself, think a bit differently, maybe that changes something big. You never know.
Yeah, it's like I like this concept of actually, you know, being curious and asking yourself why not, because like every single little action, it brings more context, it brings some new interaction. There's always some continuation, right, from the action. And if you don't do anything, then there's clearly no continuation. So it's like building new opportunities through taking action. This is amazing. And honestly, I didn't know the Einstein quote, but it's I should have known this, because it will be useful for me in many cases, especially in my book as well. Wow, that was like, I don't know, my first impression is like, you need to speak more. It's like,
Let's see.
you're I know maybe it's not very developmental, but yeah, I mean, many powerful concepts explained in very friendly manner. So fantastic. And yeah, the whole speech was like really like the implementation of this whole idea. Why not, right? And every topic you brought up is just creating a lot of follow-ups in my mind. So yeah, it's really awesome. Thank you for this, Team.
Yeah, pleasure. Always happy, and I mean, this is also the thing where actually I always like these talks, because you ask me some good questions in the beginning, and questions I don't usually think about too much. What is meaningful impact is not a question I ask myself day to day. So actually, it's really nice to talk about these things, so you can reflect a bit, because otherwise I'm too lazy sometimes to reflect at all. But this is really good, and maybe there's a few more people who start reflecting on some of the questions or ask themselves why not, and then maybe we get a few more experiments, especially on the abstract topics like operating models, culture, how do organizations work is incredibly abstract, so it's difficult to do as a thought concept, or on paper or on some kind of slide. It's always good to just experiment and just take action, just like you said.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's true, but also like you realized me that maybe I should take a step back, with a group of friends we are working here, and really, we should go back and do the homework and do like the purpose day, or the cow day, or because we are very much remote, and but now I just have envisaged that like the face-to-face meeting would be such a great idea for us after all these months. So yeah, I need to buy a cow. Or
Yeah, actually, so we are kind of renting the cow. So it's like you rent the cow for a year basically, and just renew the rental contract in a way. So this is much easier than buying one and taking care of it.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, even like a sponsoring an animal in a zoo, like a local zoo. So this was like exactly. There needs to be time to really step back and have this reflection, and this is very important as well in your talk. Honestly, I have so much material after this presentation. I don't need to ask you any questions. Just so we can equally well park here. Maybe one thing. If I was to ask questions, maybe, and let's decide whether you want to answer this one as well. But like And maybe I give you some context at the beginning, because we are a group of friends who worked together, and we are now trying to have like a kind of digital boutique or think tank, little small thing of ours. But it so happens that we usually work on different projects and on different clients, right? And there's not much of the synergy we expected, right, from this work to work together. So how, like, this is of my interest. How often, do you have a chance to really work as a bigger team of life sciences in one engagement, in one client engagement? And is there any strategy for this to say no to individual engagements and really seek hard for group engagements? How?
Yeah, I mean, one is I guess as you say, it becomes real once you work together on some kind of engagement, some kind of project. And for some of us, it became real through Teal around the world, of course, but there's also the client work that we're doing. So, kind of sharing some of that work. But then again, there's also what is true is probably one of the, let's say, the more traditional conservative concepts is all of the 15, 20 people I mentioned before are actually on the payroll. So we are all employed by life sciences. We all get a monthly salary. And, in that sense, we're just working together as one big team, as one company. So it's not a group of freelance agents, or it's not a group of partners who only get money if there's engagement. We all get money and kind of a salary every month, no matter what the engagements look like. Now, obviously, if there's no engagements, then we would need to reduce headcount and that kind of stuff. I mean, there's still economics behind, of course, but it's not like just because you don't have a project, you wouldn't be part of the team meetings or something. For a while, you might, just have no client engagement, but we do have team meetings, we do have governance meetings, we do have all sorts of things like the cow days as well. And always the team is present, so the team is there, and it's not the typical freelance kind of coming together. It's really, we're all on the payroll. And I think that does make a difference. Now, we do have a few partnerships. We do have people who we work with more loosely in a way, with the corporate rebels is one of the bigger examples, but also with other people like Eric Östergaard, who's the Teal Dots in an Orange World guy.
Yeah.
And also there we basically say, well, some things he's just really, really good with, and he's certainly much better than we are with certain things. So, it is in the best interest of the client to basically call Eric and say, Eric, can you run that for us or with us? So we learn from each other as well. And for the client, it's just a better choice. And then, this is then probably where it's to an extent balancing your own economics as well, because obviously, if you have people on the payroll, you want to make sure that they're somehow utilized, and at the same time using Eric or whoever else, and is just a bit of a different economical setup.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Right, so thank you very much, Tim, for this.
Pleasure.
Is there if you like, I sometimes ask my guests also like to maybe to share one final thought with my group and with the audience, like some high level encouragement or recipe.
Yeah. I guess probably what I said before, follow your passion, think about what you really enjoy doing, because again, one finite thing in life, which is lifetime, so it would be stupid and sad to waste it. And basically ask yourself, why not try it, right? I mean, there's so many opportunities out there, and usually if you follow your passion, and some things will work out. And, it's not probably day one always. We've also had that with our company. It's not like day one all of a sudden everything working out. But if you follow the passion, you will usually be successful as well, from an, say, economical perspective as well. So I would say, why not follow your passion?
Awesome. Thanks very much. Timm Urschinger from Life Sciences, who is our guest tonight. Thanks for finding time. I really appreciate, and we'll, as soon as possible, we'll share your thoughts to the audience. So thank you again. Stay in touch, and
Yeah.
fingers crossed for your mission and for your passions to come true.
Thank you. Pleasure. And thanks a lot for the invite.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Good.